going to attempt to provide an introduction to the artist on the screen here, Don Van Vliet, otherwise known as Captain Beefheart. Captain Beefheart is no doubt one of the most controversial and polarizing figure in music. He was active starting in the mid-60s through early 80s, but never really obtained any great popularity, but is a legend among those who appreciate his idiosyncratic sound. Most people either absolutely love Captain Beefheart or they absolutely hate him. He has a very unusual approach to music. Well, he actually started out as a conventional rock and roll band. If you listen to his first album, Safe as Milk, you would find nothing or just a few things odd there. But he hated that constant 4/4 beat, and he looked to do something, as he called it, more interesting. Well, he did. And his second album, Trout Mask Replica, is considered by most people his masterpiece. He let it all hang out there. Now, the lead song on that album is called Frownland, and so we're going to start with Frownland today. And it's one of the most analyzed songs. It's only 1 minute and 40 seconds, but there's so much packed into it. And if I were just to play you Frownland straight out, you would probably run screaming from the room within the first 10 seconds. So I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to give it to you in spoonfuls, starting with the lyrics. So let's see if I can get them on the screen. I'm going to have to leave my glasses on for this part. I'm going to read you the lyrics. You should be able to see them on your screen. My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. My spirit's made up of the ocean and the sky and the moon and all my eye can see. I cannot go back to your land of gloom, where black, jagged shadows remind me of the coming of your doom. I want my own land. Take my hand and come with me. It's not too late for you. It's not too late for me to find my homeland, where a man can stand by another man without an ego flying, with no man lying, and no one dying by an earthly hand. Let the devils burn and the beggar learn, and the little girls that live in those old worlds take my hand. My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. I cannot go back to your Frownland. Typical Captain free verse, I guess. Perhaps a Dada-esque poetry. Has a few rhymes in there, doom and gloom, but no organized rhythm. Well, you could read it on a personal level. You could say, I don't want to go back to your Frownland. We've all been there probably with relationships that turn sour and there's nothing positive left. It's just a Frownland everywhere you look. I don't think that's what he's really talking about. He's talking about the whole world being a Frownland, and God, don't we know that now? Don't we know that in the last 2.5 years, that the whole world can turn into a Frownland and a place we need to escape from? And so it's a story about escaping from a bad situation and hopefully finding a happy one. It's a happy song, really. It's a song of liberation. Next, I want to play you the isolated track of just Don's singing of this song. Because if I were to play you the full track, you'll hear a little later, there's so much what appears to be cacophony, disorganized sound. I said appears to be. In reality, it's highly organized sound, but organized in a way that your ears are not really used to hearing. So let's hear Don's voice and kind of ease into this.
My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. My spirit's made up of the ocean and the sky and the sun and the moon and all my eye can see. I cannot go back to your land of gloom, where black jagged shadows remind me of the coming of your doom. I want my own land. Take my hand and come with me. It's not too late for you if it's not too late for me to find my homeland. Where man can stand by another man without an eagle flying, with no man lying, and no one dying by an earthly hand. Let the devil burn in the beggar land, and the little girls who live in those old worlds. Take my kind hand. My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. I cannot go back to your Frownland.
Captain's voice has quite a range. If I had to pick out perhaps one artist that he emulates with his singing, I'd have to go with Howlin' Wolf. I feel his very bluesy roots. And then also, he does kind of some songs that are like sea shanties. You got a little taste of that. It's not too late for you. It's not too late for me. Nice little simple rhythm to that part of the song. Don had a unique way of producing his records. First of all, he wrote every note, that not only what you just heard, but his basic band was 2 guitars, a bass guitar, and a drummer. And he wrote every song on a piano, which was then transcribed by the drummer and taught to the other 3 members. And what you will hear when we get around to actually playing the song is that they're all playing seemingly, sometimes they play together, but often they play seemingly disconnected keys, disconnected rhythms, disconnected time. And so it's kind of like a tone poem, just like his words are a poem. The music should be thought of as a poem, not so much as a conventional song, although they are. But his way, after he took a year to teach every note to every musician, and they practiced and practiced, and finally they went into the recording studio, and they recorded the whole double album. It was over an hour of music in a few hours, because they were just that tight. They had learned this song and practiced these songs over and over again to the point where they could play them in their sleep probably. Don, he knew the songs, he wrote the songs. He didn't stand in front of the band and sing them at the same time. He recorded all the music, and then he kind of was in a different room from the rest of the band, and he just kind of recited his poetry over the music. You can see there was long pauses there for the music. And that's kind of almost disconnected in a way from the music, although Don's certainly capable of fronting a band and singing a song, and he does it in many other places. But on this album in particular, he's almost reciting his poetry over the music that he's composed. And it all works for me and for many people. But for a lot of other people, it doesn't work at all. It's just they cannot quite wrap their minds around what he's doing. So at this point, we'll go ahead and play a little bit of the whole song and see what you think. If you've never heard Captain Beefheart before, prepare to have your ears assaulted.
My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. My spirit's made up of the ocean and the sky and the sun and the moon and all I can see.
Are you still there? I know it's very difficult for many people to not run screaming from the room after about 10 seconds of that. But if you can hang in there and listen to it maybe 5, 10 times, it'll start to grow on you, I promise. And eventually you will figure out that this man was probably one of the greatest musical geniuses of the 20th century. Although it may take a few more centuries before it's generally appreciated. Here's a little more.
Sun in the moon, in all I can see. I cannot go back to your land of gloom, where black jagged shadows remind me of the coming of your doom. I want my own land. Take my hand and come with me. It's not too late for you if it's not too late for me to find my homeland.
I know I gotta break this down into small parts to give you a breather. Like I say, they're all playing in different times, and sometimes they play together and sometimes they don't. And the drumming is amazing, but not anything like a normal rhythm that you've ever probably heard before. The other person that I would compare Don to musically would be someone like Ornette Coleman, free jazz. Doesn't seem to feel that he needs to be anchored in any consistent beat. Goes from time to time, from beat to beat, and wherever his flights of fancy take him. It's kind of similar actually to some of the modern hip hop. A good rapper like Tom McDonald or an Upchurch will go through 6 different flow changes in a couple minute song. You know, they'll have one beat and then all of a sudden they'll change and they'll do another beat. Captain Beefheart was not against doing something like that.
To find my homeland, where man can stand by another man without an ego flying, with no man lying, and no one dying by an earthly hand. Let the devil burn in the beggar land, and the little girls that live in low, low worlds. Take my kind hand, my smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. I cannot go back to your Frownland.
So there it is. That's the start of a great musical journey, the opening track to Trout Mask Replica. Now, that album came out in 1969, and I was fortunate enough to be introduced to it about a year later in the summer of 1970 by my friend Brian Smith. I might never have become a Beefheart fanatic if it hadn't been introduced to me early on and with such enthusiasm. I absolutely love this album. I would put it on the top of my list of favorite albums, except that people would think I was insane, so I drop it down to 2 or 3. But it's definitely near the top of my list. I've been listening to it for over 50 years, and I absolutely love this album. But if you look around online, you'll see other people doing first-time reactions to this song, and they're bewildered. They don't, or other Captain Beefheart songs. Although he did do some more commercial work. I usually try to tell people, you know, if you want to understand Captain Beefheart, listen to his first album, Safe as Milk, and skip over Trout Mask Replica and go to his next album, Clear Spot. And there's a song on there called Click Clack, which is a little more conventional in its rhythm, and the rhythm mimics a freight train. I've actually did a reaction to that early on. Unfortunately, the live clip I used of the captain playing that Click Clack song in Germany was banned for copyright reasons. So it's actually available on Rumble if anyone wants to take the time to look at one of our first videos that I did with Howard called Was there any good music after 1968? Interesting debate that Howard and I have been having for about 40 years. I usually tell people, listen to Click Clack, listen to some of the other more conventional noise, and then songs, and then eventually, if you're starting to understand Beefheart, then attempt. Trout Mask Replica is really, although it came out near the beginning, is really the graduate course of Beefheart. And it's definitely, some people will never get it, will never like it, will never be able to get by what they hear as disorganized sound. I'm indebted to Samuel Andreyev, a classical composer who has taken the time to break out each instrument and show you exactly what they're playing, the key they're in, the time they're playing, and made a very convincing case for what I knew intuitively, that this was not an accident. These songs were not just accidentally thrown together. These were meticulously composed tone poems, which were so far advanced of anything that was happening in the rock and roll world that they're still trying to catch up with the Captain. I will put links to Mr. Andreyev's analysis of Frownland. And also I'm indebted to Ant-Man B, who has a YouTube channel, who has isolated all of the tracks. And that's where I got the isolated vocal. But you can also look at his video, which I will link, which breaks out each of the players and gives you an isolated track of what the drummer was doing, what the bass player was doing, what the two guitarists were doing, which is very, very interesting to listen to it that way. I hope maybe I've whetted your appetite to go a little further with Don. Again, you might not want to just dive into Trout Mask Replica if you were having trouble with this one, because they don't get any easier.
Holding in the way, that's what I heard them say. They used to eat the